to the Trinity Force Podcast. Yo, it's that Triforce cast beaming straight to your home. Grab a beer so we know Pony drinking alone. Send an email, a quick tweet, just pick up the phone. Leave a message at the beep if you're a creep, watch your tone. Discuss the meta game, patch notes, whatever helps your stats most. Obi-Pon Kenobi is your last hope to snatch gold. So grab your headphones and join in the fun. We'll try and force in some jokes and some cringeworthy puns. Yo, we can make it together, people. Trinity Force Podcast. These boys are second to none. Now that's the end of the intro. It's time we begun.
Hey guys, welcome to the Trinity Force Podcast. My name is Adam Ponophobia Cogswell, joined by Serial Dom and Skyen for this evening. And if Skyen's on the podcast, you know what that means.
New champion discussion.
Yeah,
I'm gonna rant about visual design.
Thank you.
You didn't give the listeners any time to respond to that. That was their chance to say, "Oh, I know," and then you just nope. Teacher's going to tell you anyways.
This is one of those fill in the blanks podcasts where I will say something, we will all wait a few moments, and the listeners will scream it at the radio. And it's the participation. I want my listeners to get involved with what we're talking about.
If you all do it at the same time, we can hear you. But you all have to do it at the same time. That's the main thing.
You used to do call-ins.
I did.
And if you clap
way
way
back
hard,
then.
Tinkerbell will live.
We're not clapping because Tinkerbell is not available to the League of Legends universe or lore. However, Ivern, what's his name now? What is he?
Green Father.
Oh, the Green Father. Right, wasn't he like the corrupt one or some bullshit previously?
What?
I think he used to be just a generic druid guy, and they changed his design up at some point in the process.
No, like in his lore, wasn't he like an evil
Ivern
guy?
the Cruel?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll get going on that later.
Yeah,
I forgot to check that out when I was in the PvE playing him, for this podcast. I forgot to check the lore that was right there and check all the quotes that he says, like, "I used to be a bad guy, and here's the rest of my story if you hit Control 5.
Yes, well, if you want the rest of the story, you can go to Google and type Ivern and look up his Wikipedia page, and the entirety of his story will be right there in the lore. But we're going to try to bring you as much of everything as we can tonight, and with all Champion Select I can't call these a Champion Select podcast because that's our Patreon thing. With our champion episodes, champion preview episodes, we'll talk art direction, we'll talk a little bit about lore, we'll talk about what his abilities do, and we'll spend a very absorbent amount of time talking about how crazy and awesome and weird this new champion is, and how everybody is theory crafting so many crazy things, and we have no fucking clue what's going to happen with this game, because it's like the first legitimate, awkward, weird, different champion that's come to League. I think anybody who is knows what Ivern is, right? So we're just going to jump right in there and just talk about art direction of Ivern, and I'll let Skyen man the ship.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first direction kind of to go with when you're talking about Ivern is comparing him to Maokai, because he's sort of one of the rare occasions where Riot have decided to go back and revisit sort of a character archetype, which is the tree ant or the Treebeard Lord of the Rings kind of walking tree guy.
Yeah, Malphite and Zyra were the other ones that kind of came to mind right alongside that, but definitely Maokai is right in there with him.
Yeah, and it is an interesting contrast because with the visual design, Maokai is a tank. We all know that, and that's why his whole character model and his whole thing is he's this lumbering, big, beastie kind of guy who looks tough, who looks like he'd be hard to cut down with an axe. While Ivern, on the other hand, they've gone with this very, very slender design, kind of top-heavy with his big head, but very slender legs and very slim body and very exaggerated movements. He swings his limbs along a lot when he's walking around the map and when he's taking action. He's very swaying like a willow tree, where Maokai is more like a big fat oak that's hard to cut down. So they've tried very hard to sort of distinguish so it doesn't just look like two slightly different trees meandering around the map. And that's actually kind of interesting to observe, like, the differences in how Maokai expresses himself in his movements and how Ivern is just all over the place, like a giant, one of those flappy noodle guys you see in front of car dealerships.
Well, doesn't he kind of reminds me of like if Bard and Maokai were combined. Like, yeah. Bard's just kind of free flowing, but kind of all over the place, and not necessarily in like how he moves, but he's just kind of bumbling, like, hey, just bounce around, and yeah, this guy kind of does exactly the same thing.
I like what they've done to this because that obviously the first creature, the first champion that comes to your mind is Maokai when you saw this. We saw that teaser, and it looked like he had a big, giant arm like Maokai does, like that big tree trunk. And, just in that champion teaser, you couldn't really tell what he looked like outside of his face. And I was worried, and I'm sure everybody else was, that they was kind of like a reimagining of Maokai, more than less. And obviously, they've just turned him into an Ent, a different type of Ent. And Skyen went through that entire process there. But I like the fact that I really like how Skyen described this, and the fact that he seems more magical and whimsical because he's small and looks frail as he's walking around, unlike Maokai, who looks big and lumbering. And I'm being distracted by two children that are throwing stuff in the background, so I'm losing my train of thought.
That's not a nice thing to say about Cereal Box and Dom.
You
got him. He just threatened to kill us, too.
I just threatened to kill everybody. I threatened to kill the kids who are giggling and laughing in the background because, again, I've lost my complete train of thought of where I was going with this. But, I like the differences. Like, if we listen to the lines, Ivern's obviously he's nice. He doesn't want to hurt in the jungle camps. He can't hurt any of the jungle camps in the game. Like, that's part of his character. That's part of his kit and design. Well, Maokai is, I guess in his lore, Maokai was like, he was imprisoned in the tree, or no, he was brought to life and he doesn't want to be alive, essentially.
Yeah, he's a Shadow Isles guy, so he's all about being tortured and angry about things.
Pretty much.
The emo band that is the Shadow Isles.
I love Maokai because he doesn't want. It's like he doesn't want to be alive. He's like, this is all cursed. This is terrible. Throw me back to where I belong. And he's out there trying to wreak havoc. And Ivern's just kind of frolicking around, and it's a complete and total polar opposite of attitudes, and that's exactly where they needed to go with this character.
Yeah, Maokai is Linkin Park, and Ivern is more of Electric Light Orchestra. That's basically what's going on. It is interesting because Riot has revisited champion concepts before. You have Ashe, who's sort of the first archer archetype, and then they tried again with Varys to try and get a different kind of archer in there. They have Caitlyn, who was a sniper, and then they tried to do it right this time and release Jhin, who's much more of a sniper archetype. So they are they have treaded on similar ground with champions before, but it is very rare for them to do it. Usually when they create a new champion, they try to find some archetype that hasn't been put into the game before. Some sort of fantasy trope or something, and I kind of like it to see them take another stab at the same thing and then still try and differentiate it enough that it's not like it just pellet swapped something and put two of the same guy in the game.
I mean, it's not like there's room for only one treant creature or something along those lines. Frankly, I like them adding more characters that are in the similar vein of one another, from a I don't know, thematic, treant, that type of thing. Just because it means like, hey, this thing that's in the League of Legends, which doesn't actually exist anymore, isn't the only one that exists. It makes sense for something like Blitzcrank or Orianna, which are real exceptions. But Alistar, for example, is the only Minotaur we've ever seen. But we have, his bio says he's from a tribe. We have no reason to think he is the last one standing or anything along those lines. And so just adding more characters sort of thing. So, there are more species beyond humans and Yordles in this, world they've created.
It's a nice, open, what am I thinking of? It's a nice way for them to add whatever they want from any mythology that is in and around mythical creatures, or just, I guess mythology is the word for it, right? And I'm curious if let's say we get another 20 champions. It's been a year and a half. We get another Ent to come into the fold. Is there another way they can go with these characters? Would they just have to make him a really small, not like a Yordle, but the size of a Yordle, kind of like a sapling or a sprout or something? Because it seems like you're kind of exhausted. You have the big lumbering guy you said is like a redwood or an oak, and then you've got the willow who's just, he moves around, he sways and whatnot.
Is a Yordle one like a chopped in half one?
He could be a sprout.
Yeah. Or they could do the dryad, like the Greek dryad, the lady who has a tree form kind of thing out of Greek mythology. Because I did some research on Ents and tree Ents and talking trees and shit before the episode, and basically every single folk religion in the entire world has some sort of variation on the living tree that can talk and walk and do things to the forest. So it's a very, very universal kind of thing. So there's a lot of, if they want to go back into folklore and mythology, they've got a lot of places to pull from.
It's not like it's that hard to draw a connection between trees and just other flora in general.
Yeah, I mean, it is very universal, and it's kind of interesting because Ivern seems to be mostly influenced by British druidic Celtic traditions of what the talking tree is as a spirit of nature, as a life giver, as a more or less benevolent character. In Irish folklore, for instance, if you want to find the leprechaun's gold, one of the ways you can do it is ask the trees where he hides it, because the trees will be friendly and helpful and try and help you out. In other mythologies, trees are more dangerous and malevolent, but Ivern seems to come from a sort of British Celtic mythology.
Well, let's talk about splash art and Ivern and what we're seeing here. I mean, in game, we can kind of touch on what his abilities do. In game, he can create brush, like the brush that is obviously around the rift that you walk in. He can create that at any point, anywhere on the map by pressing a button and just point and click, right? And so in his splash art, he is creating life through a touch. It looks like he's creating a flower, and all the animals around him are watching him do this. And he has kind of like a joyful look on his face, so he's happy to bring life to the I guess to the Summoner's Rift or whatever the hell we're playing on at this point. And I guess Skyen, colors, the way the splash art looks, do you have any qualms with it? Is there anything like I want your opinion on what what the direction?
I think it's a gorgeous splash art. I think it's one of the better ones that Riot has done. And one thing I noticed is that most champions in their splash arts tend to be looking out at the viewer or the player, the person who's looking at the splash art. Most of them tend to stare out at you to challenge you or to engage you. Ivern is not interested in staring at you. He's looking at the plant because that's what he cares about, which I thought was a nice little touch. That we're just peeking in on a scene of Ivern doing whatever the hell he does. He's not particularly interested in us. He's not up for a fight. He's not challenging anything. He's just, ooh, here's a plant. I'm touching it with my finger like I'm E.T. and there are birds and things, and I'm happy and I'm sitting down like a child. He's very childish in his expression as well. Just very, ooh, this is cool. This is fun. I'm poking it and things happen.
I don't know if it's the same person working on all of them or if it's different artists and everything, but
they have a whole bunch of artists.
No, but Riot's like sort of really nature-focused skins tend to be very, very well done. Elderwood Hecarim immediately came to mind. It's like that splash came out and it just looked gorgeous, and the in-game model supported it, thankfully. But I mean, like just all of those things always jump to mind. They always stand out. LeBlanc had one recently that was similarly just gorgeous.
Yeah, I don't know who did the splash art for Ivern, actually. I'm a little annoyed by that because I'd love to see if they don't have a online profile I can stalk somewhere and see their other stuff. But yeah, you're right, actually. The nature splashes tend to be really well done, very lushly rendered, which is very difficult. Like, plant life is really difficult to get right and make look right. It's really hard. So they've done a spectacular job on it, I think. Also notice, by the way, the little plant he's doing, it's on top of a broken tree stump. So what he's doing is he's reviving a tree that had died or been cut down or something like that. And again, nurturing life giver, father figure kind of thing.
Yeah, that really ties into his lore. Like, he just is all about making sure everything gets used to the maximum, amount possible and everything. He's really not about wasting anything.
Yeah. Speaking of his lore, by the way, his lore, like TLDR, his lore is that there once was an evil Viking called Ivern the Cruel.
Oh my god!
He went to Ionia, he cut down a tree, and now he is a tree instead, and he's basically like the god of nature in Runeterra, as it were.
Sorry, the Ivern the Cruel thing really good and pisses me off because that's all they say. They say he was called Ivern the Cruel. They give us zero reason to actually believe that he was cruel. And I hate that from a narrative standpoint. Like, actually show me why he was, like, show me. Don't tell me that he's cruel. Show me, make me believe it. I can tell you that Mitch is an asshole, but he actually has to be one every single day for you to believe to believe me when I say that.
No, I think everyone's pretty on board.
Yeah, at this point, but
they've gotten to know you over 100 episodes or so. Like,
yeah,
there is proof in the pudding. There is no pudding here.
And even his motive for like going and ultimately cutting this tree down, it wasn't because he was like out maliciously just raiding islands or whatever it was. He was trying to find something that would help him deal with the Iceborne when they rose to prominence in the Freljord. So he had motive for doing what eventually turned him into Ivern Greenfoot, the Greenfather. Yeah,
The Greenfather.
He had motive for doing that, and his approach was probably pretty bad, and maybe you could call that cruel, but he was already called Ivern the Cruel going into this. So just throwing that in there, like, really, really infuriates me, and Riot has a bad habit of doing that type of stuff, glossing over things and just saying, hey, believe us because we're writing this story. And that really frustrated me. And otherwise, I really liked the Gift of Venom story. There was one part that kind of got to me a little bit, but otherwise, the rest of the bio didn't bother me, and I really liked the Gift of Venom story. So it was just that one Ivern the Cruel thing that really set me off.
Yeah, I mean, it is Riot storytelling. It's often brilliant, but there are just these little things where it's like, you needed an editor on that one guy.
I almost think they are trying too hard to make sure they only reveal select little tidbits to us and not really doing their stories justice by just revealing everything that's necessary to tell the story. And then, if they reveal too much, they've revealed too much and they can deal with the fallout from that later and everything. But give us a good story. Don't give us a half-ass story because you're trying to play your hand too close to the chest.
Would you have found it better if they would have been there was a guy, Ivan the Cruel, he plundered lands, he stole, he cheated, he did this, and they kind of list off some...
I would have been annoyed with a single paragraph of exposition as far as that goes, but I would have been happier than I am currently.
That's more or less what I'm getting at. Because the Ivan the Cruel story probably... I mean, I guess it is. I mean, it's part of his character, right? Because he was. They're trying to tell you, and this is obvious. He was evil, and now he's good, and for whatever reason, he went from evil to good, and blah 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 blah. But wouldn't just one paragraph suffice in that? He did this, he did this, he did this, or he had he was predisposed, blah blah blah.
It's hard to buy this as a redemption story when we have no reason to believe he needed redemption.
Yeah, and it's kind of the redemption story doesn't really show in the rest of him, I don't think, because I've listened to his special interactions and his voice lines and stuff when he came out, and there's no in his in-game dialogue, he's just a happy nature spirit guy who's just pleased to be everywhere. There's no callback to I used to be such an asshole. There's no sense of regret or remorse in him. He's it doesn't come through at all. So I agree with you. The whole thing about him being evil and then being good was kind of, he could just have been him from the start. He didn't need to be a human first. I don't think it really adds anything to him character-wise, at least not that they show in game.
Did you feel like there was a bit of disconnect between his in-game dialogue and speech and what came out in the story? To me, his in-game quotes, his dialogue and everything feels very whimsical, and that's fun. It really adds to the charm of playing the character. Whereas in the story, it felt like he was more just objective and observing and not necessarily the whimsical character that we got in the game. Neither of these are bad. It was two interesting sides to the character, but when we get such little information about these characters, it felt like there was a bit of a disconnect to me.
Yeah, I didn't really feel that, but I certainly felt there was a disconnect between his background story and his in-game story. But in the story itself, I can see that that's just another in that story he's dealing with hunters who are murdering his animal friends, and he kind of has to. The story is a lot about him trying to sort of remember what it's like to be human and figure out what the hell these hunters are up to, why they're doing what they're doing. So I get that he's maybe more contemplative in that story and he's more freewheeling in the game. But yeah, it's the lore story is great, the lore background is not so much.
Yeah, that's really where I landed on it.
All right. Well, we pretty much talked. I mean, there's the lore piece. I knew that was coming out. Do we have anything more to talk about the his movements, art, direction, or anything before we just kind of jump into who Ivern is?
The Candy King Ivern splash art is the stuff of children's nightmares.
That's amazing.
I love it.
And everything. It's great, but I see, I'm like, oh my god, that would terrify Adam's children.
Yeah, why don't you show them that? Just show them that picture, and they
Right
might
now.
just go into a sugar coma or like a fear coma or both.
I don't know.
I
They
would-
haven't watched it yet, so
I love the
Give it a couple more
references
years.
to the gingerbread ward in there. Those are nice. I kind of wish there was some.
Lollipoppy's face is in
I
the
love
background
that.
of it.
Bittersweet Lulu feels like she's not very present in this, and that's kind of disappointing. Maybe the cupcake on top of a gingerbread. You know, it's kind of hard to describe what's going on in there. It feels like they could have tossed in a little reference to her because she's another one in a very limited pool of champs that even fit into this this splash and skin concept.
I hadn't even looked like I played the game I played as him. I was using that skin, but obviously you're not looking for stuff like that in game.
It's whimsical. I honestly I like the base one more. I normally really get behind the skins and everything just because I love the directions they go for, but the base splash art is just so beautiful, and the skin too. Like the in-game model just looks so good that it almost feels like a crime to use the skin.
I just love how I love that he's big and tall, right? Because they made it so he put his hands on his side and he leans really far forward when he's watching over a grove or a camp while he's casting, and he kind of looking around like just he's like that all-seeing. He's like that father figure, like I'm watching you grow. I'm going to save you or whatever. And I love that art that they put in the game, or rather his model and pose that he has. So I'm going to use that as a transition to talk about Friend of the Forest and the rest of his abilities, because we can now talk about Ivern. If you've been living under a rock, which I don't think most of you have been, but if you have, we're going to talk about him. So Ivern is the first champion in League of Legends that cannot damage neutral monsters.
The jungle camps.
The jungle camps.
Camps.
Well, no, those are monsters. He can damage epic monsters.
Yes.
So he can do Dragon, Baron, and Rift. Those are all epic monsters. He can attack those. However, he cannot attack either his or enemies' jungle camps. What he does instead is at first he walks up and he puts down a grove over. It takes 2.5 seconds. He puts a grove over top a jungle camp, and then that grove slowly matures, starting at 40 seconds, and it goes all the way down to 6 at max level. And when it's fully matured, Ivern then can interact with the camp, and he just takes the camp, gets all the experience and everything, and even gets the if there's a buff, he gets that as well. However, after he's dropped just the grove, like 2.5 seconds in, he can instantly smite that camp and make it, and he gets everything in it. So he can instantly take a camp if he has smite up in 2.5 seconds, which is probably the fastest clear anybody pre-items.
Yeah,
he can clear in like 56 seconds to get to level 3. Like that's the fastest I've seen him clear the jungle, which
With
is
both
insane.
buffs and full life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it also takes a good chunk of your early health and mana to put down. You when you make the grove, once it finishes channeling the 2.5 seconds, it takes up a chunk of your health and mana. It doesn't go over time while it's maturing or anything.
It's worth noting that he finishes that really fast clear with full life, but he is very, very vulnerable at parts during it.
Yeah.
He's vulnerable to counter jungling in the early game. Really vulnerable to it.
Yeah, there's also like the smiting is interesting. The game I played, like there's some camps you want to smite because you obviously get a lot back from if you go to like a really low clear and then go to red buff, place the grove with like the last bit of your health and then smite it. You have just a ton that comes back because it's based on your missing health as the bonus you get from smiting red. There's also some camps that doesn't make sense to smite.
Like
unless you just need to take them, like Gromp and Krugs Gromp you can get a little bit out of because even enemies attacking you, that poison armor does stuff, but otherwise
Krugs deals bonus damage to towers.
Yeah, to towers and to minions. You're like, no, that doesn't really help. But the other ones to smite is Rift Scuttler. Rift Scuttler is kind of weird because if you think about it, if the enemy jungler comes by at any point while that 40 seconds or 30 seconds is going on, they can just take it, and then you've wasted all that health and mana you spent on it just entirely. And I think it might be a situation where you'll probably have to be using smite for that a lot. I think. But
it also means you're not really wasting that much time on the Rift Scuttler, which can be a time-consuming thing.
Now, my question is, can you walk by smite anything, or does there have to be a grove down to smite it?
Grove has to be down. Because you can't smite for free. You still have to place down the health and mana that it takes to put the grove to.
Okay, so I can't just walk by smite. I can't if later in the game, you know how sometimes AD carries start taking your jungle camps, or other people start taking your jungle camps, and you're just like, hey, let me smite that so I can.
You can't smite raptors. No, you can't.
So you can't just walk by and smite them.
Nope, you have to put down the.
Can you put
first.
down the grove if they are in combat?
That I'm not completely sure.
I wasn't able to test. I only did a back game. For me, it was just playing around with his abilities and seeing how he worked.
I think you can, but it's kind of you need to get it down before that 2.5 seconds ends. Or you could, that would pretty much just be you need to communicate enough to get that, because 2.5 seconds isn't very long to place that if that's just the one you want.
Sure.
Which honestly might be this champion's biggest downside, is that he requires your teammates to already understand how he works and he's doing things.
Oh, very
and
much
old
so.
Karma's the best example of champions that failed because of that logic. But I don't think his are so difficult that people aren't going to be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
So there's also another fun interaction with the buffs at red and blue buff. Once you're at level 5 or higher, when you take that buff, it leaves behind another one for a minute. Like, so once you take red or blue buff, it'll leave like a token behind there that an ally can come and pick up, and you can essentially get 2 copies of the buff. And that'll work even if, I think it reads that if the grove is going and your ally kills it anyways, both of you will still get it, which is cool.
There has to be an allied champion nearby for that to happen, though. He can't just take it and it appear.
No, I mean, it will always be left behind, though. That you don't need an ally around for it to be left behind.
Yeah. So, but to clarify further there, it'll always be left behind. If an ally does come in range when the sapling spawns, Ivern can actually pick it up and give it to that person. And I think that's just so that mid laners, for example, don't have to waste time going
don't
around.
Have to walk all the way. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so they could go walk themselves and do it. They don't need Ivern around to pick it up, but you can transfer it. Or sorry, I should say give them a copy of it without them getting that close.
And the ally can kill it, and then they get the buff, and Ivern gets a buff as well.
And they'll leave a sapling behind too.
And enemies can't do anything about that. They can't walk up and claim the buff for themselves or anything. So it's not one of those you kill it and then your mid laner has to hurry up over there, otherwise it's going to get counter taken or something. It's there for a minute, get it or don't.
The game auto pings it too on your minimap. It starts pinging it just to let your team know that, hey, there's a thing there, and it's exactly 1 minute that's left behind. So you've got actually a little bit of time in case you're like, hey, mid laner, when you're coming back through, because I'm taking this right now, just come grab it.
Is this the most loaded passive that's ever been put in the game? Because it's insane.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of
the
stuff.
amount of text certainly and what it can do.
It's insane.
It also doesn't have any direct combat.
Jin would be high up there too. Just with how does crit work with this? How does attack speed work? What does attack speed affect?
What is critical strike doing? What does he? And his passive is the reloading portion. That's passive. Yeah. So, but I would say loaded as in that it does a lot outside of just Ivern. I would say yes, because there's so many other interactions here that you have to worry about.
Yeah, but it doesn't really have any direct effect on the combat portion of his kit and everything. Buffs are going to, but every jungler is going to have buffs at some point or another. You don't have to think about Ivern's passive when you're fighting with or against him.
Sure.
The other thing that I forgot that is kind of nice is if you don't have enough health or mana, obviously you can't use his passive, but what it'll do is there's a cooldown, how there'll be cooldowns that can actually appear on passives, like, I don't know, Nocturne's passive or something. It'll show a ticker that's telling you if you just regen, how long it'll be till your passive is ready again to use to drop down a grove, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, the passive. I'm thinking about if Ivern sees competitive play, he's gonna screw the entire jungle meta every time he's played in the game, because here's a guy, he can walk into your jungle and you have 2.5 seconds to respond once he's at a camp, and then your buff is gone, and there's fuck all you can do about it.
If they've got smite, it's pretty quick.
And that's even the big concern or the big advantage you're getting from him just by having him in the game and everything. As far as competitive goes, I think it's going to be one of those things where Aurelion Sol was ban worthy right at Midseason Invitational because he was the only one that learned how to play him. But once people have a little bit of experience, they're going to know how to deal with this type of stuff. I mean, professionals are already good at proactively warding key points. There's no reason to think that they won't be, targeting red buff or blue buff with specific defensive wards just to prevent this type of thing.
But if you win a fight and Ivern is in a like, if you take down one, maybe two guys and force the enemy to retreat, like you can have their entire jungle like that and still have time to go do the dragon. I think he's gonna enable some crazy denial if you can get him in a comp that wins a fight.
I think he's good. That's true in the same way that a Moomoo's okay if they don't get shut down within the first like 2 levels. Like I shouldn't say like new. Like a Moomoo now isn't as bad as like if you played 3 years ago when a Moomoo was picked. Like you just went and shut him down at blue because he had to go there. There was no other option. This seems like that could kind of be the same thing, but with a little bit more guesswork to figure out where you need to go. But you could shut down. Like if you get him in the jungle early on after he's put down a grove or two and he's doing just groves and not smiting, you kill him. Like there is no way you don't kill that guy.
He doesn't have a lot of dueling potential. I mean, he can kind of get himself out of trouble, but in the first
he's done.
First 5 levels
once
of the
he has
game,
his ult, he can duel a few people.
Yeah, then it's a different story.
But that's it.
But even then, catch him with that on cooldown, and again, he is.
Yeah.
Well,
let's go.
He's going to force a lot of play. Like a lot of people are going to have to play around Ivern when he's in the game in order to like. You can't just ignore him. Really,
there's something to keep in
figure out
mind
a way to deal.
about Ivern too. Is he actually has relatively slow movement speed and armor. If I compare him to Elise, for example, Elise in Spider Form's 350 movement speed base. Ivern is only 330 the entire time, while also Ivern only has 22 armor. Unlike Volibear, who has 26.4, and that is significantly increasing with level higher. Shyvana has 27, so he's weak. He's like a mage. He has almost no armor. He has slow move speed, and he is a melee attacker unless he's standing in a bush.
You also got to remember though that you can rune a bit differently than you need to with other junglers. Like you don't need to throw armor in. You don't necessarily. You don't need attack speed. There's a lot of things you can do differently with his runing page, and I can't imagine anyone's optimized this yet because that'd be crazy for somebody to have figured it out.
Let me back up. You don't need attack speed for the purposes of doing your camps. You can look at it differently, but attack speed's still valuable because of the passive on his W.
I have to imagine if we're talking runes, he will definitely run. He's likely going to run armor runes if he's invading. He might run health per level. I mean, I could see that as well because he's not taking much. But he also could. It could be very much a case where he's just running a bunch of flat health to keep him healthier. Because the Friend of the Forest, unlike all of the other previous champions that have come out, where it's like a percentage of max health or percentage of current health, it's a flat amount. It's 174 to 161 based on level, how much he's using to make a grove. That's nothing. And it goes down.
Goes up. It goes up and then to down.
Right,
weird.
Right.
It actually caps at level 10 and then starts coming back down.
But
I did not notice that.
But even 200 health or whatever it may be, if you're runing for that extra health, it doesn't matter. But I definitely feel like he's going to be running move speed somewhere in there. But you have to
Mobies.
He could also run cooldown reduction because he desperately needs this stuff, and that's kind of hard to come by for the way you might want to itemize him.
Hey, how about we talk about some other skills so we have an idea of even anything besides just his passive, and then we can discuss what'll make sense for everything.
Sure, we'll just roll through it. Root Caller. Ivern throws a vine in a direction, and it deals magic damage and roots the person who gets hit. And then Ivern and his allies can then dash to that within auto attack range to that person. So you go to your maximum auto attack range when you dash it. Anybody can do that. Even like a Vayne, a Maokai, anybody who right clicks on this champion.
This skill,
Darius,
basically team-wide twisted advance.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's another. Ivern is so fucking destructive. Between his passive, the Root Caller, and the W, which we'll get to later, he fucks with the game in so many ways because that thing alone. So many champions that don't have gap
really
closers.
long cooldowns. I mean, he pays for it. These are powerful, cool abilities that he does not get to use often relative to pretty much every other champion.
At rank 1. I mean, that's a cooldown.
Yeah. So there's a lot of also just really cool utility things with this. First of all, that jump is crazy because everyone's able to jump to the target. It's not one person, which I think I'm going to call this now is going to be the first thing that gets nerfed about him. It's going to be like Thresh Lantern. Remember Thresh Lantern could shield everybody a long time ago? Everyone being able to jump with this is kind of ridiculous. But it gets to whatever their auto attack range is. This guy has multiple auto attack ranges, so you end up in a situation where you can jump to them and then put a brush down, and then you gain that you're on top of them. You gain more auto attack range, and then keep hitting them from afar. You can only jump once though per
If they
queue.
nerf that down to one person, that's going to be
like
really
two.
frustrating. Yeah,
I don't think
two
they
would be okay, but
yeah,
one
I think
would be
that
frustrating. Like, how many AD carriers are going to accidentally take it when it would have been really good for a Darius or a Galio or something?
yeah, but also that root gets up to 2 seconds, which is also crazy. Plus, you're probably going max CDR, which if 40% of 12 will get you at 4.8 seconds off, so 9 point. No, oh geez, that's terrible math. 7.2.
7.8 seconds
See,
or something. Yeah.
I think we'll have to talk that because I don't know if you're going to go max CDR. I mean, I think you kind of
you
need
have to.
CDR with him, yeah, because the 16
think you'll
second
go.
thing.
You'll understand why after we get through the rest.
No,
of the
I've looked at the whole thing, but I feel like it's more of kind of like a Diana build, honestly. Like you could hard carry. I think you could pretty much hard carry with like a Diana style build, but we'll talk about that through.
Also that jump is like probably about. I'm eyeballing this from my memory, like 1200 range, maybe 1500 is what you can click on the target to jump to your auto attack range to them.
Like a mummy bandage?
Yeah, 1,000. That's like 1100, 1200.
Yeah, just to give people, I mean, because it's hard to imagine units and everything, but a mummy bandage is a pretty.
Draw it out in your head. Draw out 1,200 units real quick.
Also, there's another piece to this root caller. When Daisy is active, Daisy's his ultimate. He essentially summons a blue golem. If he hits a target with the Q, Daisy will rush toward that target. So that's how he can't. It's another way for him to control Daisy outside of pressing R a bunch of times and moving Daisy around. So brush.
Oh, no. There's at least one more thing I forgot. This also works on not only epic monsters, so you can you can have everyone jump over the wall to Baron if you like. It also works on friendly monsters too. Oh, yeah. Like any jungle creep you can hit with root collar. It doesn't do damage or root them, but everyone can jump that wall. So suddenly,
it's really easy to get to walls.
Let's say you're in a jungle. Let's say you're in the jungle. That's
he can get that with the brush.
No, but he will also automatically jump to it upon hitting it. So he's going to give vision to whatever he just like. He's going to give vision by virtue of having transported over a wall, for example, himself.
My idea was more let's say you're near Blue Side Krugs, okay, and your friend's trying to get away from like Dragon, like running through that area from some enemy champions. You could throw root collar at the Krugs, and they could just jump to it, and then they're safe. Like that's such a ridiculous like double lanterns like range amount of ability to get out.
But again, you got to be the teammate of Ivern. You have to be looking for that.
Oh yeah.
And Ivern's got to think to do that, so it's one of those like, oh, I'm waiting for him to do this ability, but then he doesn't do it because he can't read my mind. League of Legends.
I've also seen that there's some weird interactions with the walls depending on your exact auto attack range. There are some walls that an Ivern Q will not jump you over because your attack range will put you somewhere inside the wall and you get pushed back out. So it seems kind of fiddly to really use that sort of to say there's going to have to be a lot of experimentation on which walls can you do it with what champions before that becomes any kind of a standard strategy, I think.
But sneak Dragon and Baron behind scuttlers, like they won't be able to see you.
That you can do.
That's so cool.
I guess I'm curious how to work with like Caitlyn, because Caitlyn can actually attack Baron and Dragon over the wall, and so can like Tristana. So if you try to bump them, it might just put them to the back of the wall because their max attack range.
But they're already people who can jump over.
Yeah, there are already champs that can get over, so at least like they're not left behind.
Now, the other question I'd asked Dom this earlier because I didn't get a chance to play him this weekend. Does that count as an auto attack reset? The jump?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't immediately auto attack you. It puts you in the range. It doesn't automatically auto, and that's very important because if you like did that like into a turret, maybe you didn't want to do that. Maybe you just wanted to like jump in and shield yourself. I don't know. Okay, so you also can't sneak an extra hit in there or something by doing really smooth animation canceling. No, it's just a dash. It's not an actual. It doesn't actually start the auto attack. I think it might afterwards, but I think you can cancel that in midway.
All right, so another
you'll still dash
that he has, Brushmaker. Ivern can make brushes. It's like, think of it like a Zyra W, where there's charges. It stacks up 3 charges, and then you can drop 3 brushes down. And it's just like any other brush. Well, it's not like any other brush. When you drop a brush, everybody has vision of that brush. Enemies can also see what's inside that brush when they drop it down. So you can't drop it and obscure vision in like the lane and stuff. So that's something to keep in mind. If you drop it in a brush, you have now given the enemies vision of that brush as well. But
For 3 seconds.
For 3 seconds, right? But it is an extra brush. Meaning Rengar can jump out of it. Caitlyn can stand in it and get headshots out of it. Any kind of brush interaction that goes on besides vision can be done in the brush.
Which Ivern himself has.
Right, and so his passive on that is while in brush, Ivern's basic attacks gain bonus range and deal bonus magic damage. These bonuses persist for 3 seconds after leaving the brush.
And it goes to 450 is your range when you were using that, I believe was correct. So it's not like outranging many, if any, AD carries. I'm thinking maybe Lucian is like that range and Urgot's just below, if I remember the numbers right. But you get those basic attacks can do some damage if you've got some either AP or if you've got attack speed, because you're getting 20 to 60 just on hit damage, and if you're able to catch up to somebody, that's a lot of extra damage. Plus, fun interaction. I don't know how important this will be, but I thought it was kind of cool. You think about, I could just stick to somebody with Frozen Mallet, but that seems dumb. Like I'd have to go AD, and that doesn't work. Rylai's procs with this, with the damage from the empowered W's. Sense. Yeah, it makes sense, but yeah, just if you didn't think about that before, it's kind of cool.
How much range did you say he had?
450.
He had 450. So same auto attack range as Thresh, Morgana, Vladimir, and Karthus.
Oh, okay, so it is less than I was thinking.
Yes.
Okay.
Like Janna has 475, and then Mini Gnar, Mini Gnar with the Rage Gene at level 1 is only 400 to give you an idea.
Yeah.
So it's a little longer than Mini Gnar.
So there's a couple really cool things with it too. The area around the brush when you spawn it is a little bit revealed. Like I don't know, square the area total that you can see for like a couple seconds, like 3 seconds of that, and then I forget how long the brush actually stays for.
30 seconds.
30. Fuck, that's a long time. The one thing that's kind of weird is if you put it near where a turret would see it, you are not invisible in the brush. Like it acts as though you have true sight into the brush, and they can see you. So you can't place a brush right next to a turret and walk into it and be like, "Hey, you can't see me."
It gives you the little exclamation point. It gives you the exclamation point to tell you that, hey, you are seen, you dumb fuck.
There were a couple cool, like, there's a little bit of a cast time on this. Not that it stops you, but it takes like a little bit to pop up. It takes like maybe a half second to pop up. So if you're trying to stick to a target or chasing somebody down, you know it's going to take like one more auto. You want to place it like a little bit in front of you to be able to get it right up, like, because you'll walk into it as it spawns, as opposed to if you place it down where you are and you're still moving, you will miss yourself. But yeah, there's a ton of, and that's just like the most basic things you could do. There's going to be a lot of interactions with this. You also get more brush around if you put it near terrain or other brush. I don't know how to quantify that, because
if you have 3 charges in the bottom lane and you put it near one of the brushes in the bottom lane, you can cut the bottom lane in half. Like you can basically create a full curtain that's how much brush you can create when you place it near terrain and brush.
Yeah, I mean it's a really tiny square if you're just throwing it in the middle of a lane or something like that, but then when you start adding to it, it'll really you can cover pretty much one end of a lane to another.
But you can technically screw your laner over, because after that 3 seconds of true sight or revealing the area,
then you lose all vision.
Then it becomes a brush. So you could technically screw your laner over if you make this really long brush chain, and then no kill happened and everyone's still standing there. Now the person who's more powerful can stand inside that brush or use that brush in the middle of the lane to their advantage.
One thing I didn't think about, if you bridge the gap between 2 brushes, do they become one brush in terms of vision?
I think so, and you can. I think I saw a video where someone connected the 2 half brushes down in the bottom lane with Ivern brush, and they had a ward like in the tail end of one brush, and they was able to see across into the next.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was curious about. Like I didn't know how that would work, because that's it's a weird little thing, but also probably one of those interactions you'll need to know if you want to be playing him really well. Yeah. Also, I don't think we mentioned this. The range and auto attack bonus, the bonuses for your auto attack persist for 3 seconds after you leave brush too. but you get that from any brush, not just the ones you create.
Right. Let's talk about Trigger Seed next. Trigger Seed, Ivern gains or gifts the seed to target. You know what? Essentially, all this is he throws a shield on somebody. It takes a moment, then explodes and deals damage and slows everybody around that he shields. He can shield himself. He can shield Daisy. He can shield an allied champion. It's essentially
it's Face of the Mountain.
It's Face of the Mountain. Yeah.
Yeah, with a way quicker time for it to explode and a way crazier. Holy shit! It slows by 70% at all ranks for 3 seconds. What the fuck?
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense.
It's real strong.
Yeah, it's also at a pretty low cooldown.
It's also very conditional, you know.
It's
you need someone who can get into the face of the enemy to use it. Yeah,
if you either use it on somebody who's going to jump in there, and honestly, that shield's not horrible because like you're talking about
really well.
Yeah, later on, if you're max level with max CDR, it's only a 4.8 second cooldown. Like, that's not too bad for a shield, especially when you can be slowing somebody for 3 seconds. But you can use that for AD carries who are getting jumped on. Suddenly they have a nice peeling ability that, okay, that guy on top of me, he's pretty slowed for a while. It's really cool.
It's why I bought Athene's on him. You know, surprise support main looking at the support items with a shield ability. But it was just like, okay, well, on top of the damage it deals and shielding, I'll just heal somebody up along the way. Like, that was my thinking on it. I don't think that's the right item for him, but that's where my head went to right away.
Probably won't have the gold to buy all those items anyway, especially if you're out of the jungle with him. I mean, they are still just a tiny bit starved, depending on how your ganks and assists. But let's just jump right into Daisy real fast, and then we can really talk some more theory crafting, because we've got a solid 15 minutes, plus the debates, and LCS is on tonight. As much as I want to spend 2 hours on Ivern.
LCS?
Yeah, the LCS rundown.
Oh, rundown. Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, that. I was like, I know the debates are tonight, but
Worlds is next week. How the hell is the
my bad, my old podcast.
Whoa. Okay, so Daisy is it's like Tibbers. It's a summon minion. You summon it, it jumps. I think it jumps out from behind Ivern and high fives him in the air, and then lands on the ground. Right? I know it high fives.
I wasn't paying close enough attention, and I should have.
I know it high fives him.
It shows up. It doesn't like drop where like Tibbers drops where you aimed. It just kind of comes into where Ivern is.
Okay.
I mean, I wasn't paying that much attention to it either.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's a targeted drop. Like, you can't just pop it in the middle of an enemy team comp or something.
This Daisy needs some AI help. Like,
well, let's talk about what she does, and we can talk about how buggy she is. She jumps out of the air, lands. She gains 25% movement speed for the first 5 seconds after spawning. When she hits a champion 3 times, she knocks up all enemies caught in a shockwave path. Think like Tauren Chieftain from Warcraft 3 with his shockwave, where you drop it down and it goes straight out. Or even like Braum if you really want to, but it's tiny, right? It's not that big.
So what it does is when you auto attack, it actually pulls up kind of like a Tahm Kench indicator, where you see like it go through, like, you know how Tahm Kench indicator goes blue, yellow, red to let you know that you could stun somebody or pick them up with your mouth. This one does it's
a flower,
and then it essentially on the third one, it'll fire it out.
Probably a daisy.
Yeah, probably it'll fire out the shockwave even if you're not like in auto range anymore. But if it's in the range of the shockwave, like if it was gonna be able to make it, and you can avoid that, like you can get out of range of it. You can. I don't know if you can sidestep it. I'm not sure if it follows you. I think it would. Like, there's a lot of weird interactions with that still, but it's still something you can dodge, but it can get you a bunch of cool knockups. It's also a 3-second cooldown that's global between all champs. You can hit one and then hit another and start that on both of them like Braum. It's once you hit a knockup, it's 3 seconds before she can start knocking up somebody else, like start applying those stacks.
She does scale her health, magic damage, attack speed, armor, and magic resist all scale with a percentage of Ivern's AP. So he has flat AP scaling, by the way. He's not like Yorick, where there's like this weird AD into magic damage scaling. He's just flat across the board AP scaling. He actually has really
there's no like tank scaling or anything, to distinguish him from Maokai, I guess, is the big one.
Right. So you can drop Daisy down and throw Trigger Seed on her, and Trigger Seed will explode for that 70% slow, allowing her to get the knock-up. So he does bring some CC in the kit, extra CC into the kit as long as Daisy is available. And plus, if you root call somebody, she'll automatically start attacking whoever's root called.
Gains 25% bonus movement speed for 5 seconds when she spawns. So she spawns, throw that shield on her, she's going to run at something and probably slow him down. Yeah, right. Even if you can.
And so you can kind of control where she's going, but it was from my game, she was kind of dumb Like if you told her one specific thing, like to go attack, she'd go do it. But then like afterwards, she might just stand there even if she's right next to some
Okay,
minions.
I thought that was just my PvE
she's
account
buggy.
settings.
I think I've seen it on multiple videos and streams that Daisy will sometimes just stand there and do fuck all.
She really doesn't seem inclined to take action unless you tell her to. And that feels weird because it seems like, Tibbers, Mordekaiser's ghost, and all the other things are pretty, like, they want to fight stuff. They're murderers, and Daisy's just like, okay,
Well,
cool.
Tibbers kind of stood around
Rift.
for a while too. They don't really have. Look at Yorick and the Maiden. The Maiden doesn't really do everything that Yorick wants it to do. It kind of just aimlessly wanders sometimes.
There's some programming on that at least. Like this is kind of weird because I know they have to bug test this. She has like a jump that's contingent on Ivern's skills. So like it can be based on that. You could be like hitting R to tell her to go somewhere else when you hit that, and then she might jump, and who knows what that's programmed to do right now. Like it might not be what we're expecting, and I think that's it's what we have a PvE for. But she's cool.
Good thing you and I got in there and gave all this feedback, right?
Yeah, right. She lasts 60 seconds too, and regens really fast out of combat.
Yeah,
so
and
I don't know
must
why.
Be a case where the regen starts the moment that you cast the ability. So if she lasts the full time, it doesn't feel like she's on cooldown for that long.
I meant the regen of her health. Like she'll regen health out of combat really quickly. Like if you throw her into a turret because the targeting priority for turrets goes whatever minion it's on, and then if Daisy's in range, she is the next thing that gets targeted, no matter what. Not even if there's a minion wave, which is smart because otherwise she'd be hella strong against turrets, even though she already is. If you pull her out after she's been damaged and she goes out of combat, she actually regens really fast. And then you said lasts for 60 seconds. The cooldown, if you have max CDR, is 72 seconds, so you might have 12 seconds of no Daisy at max rank.
Yeah, late game it felt like she was always up, and given how the rest of his kit always feels like it's on cooldown, that was a nice reprieve.
She's also pretty beefy at 3,500 health and
she's great for taking dragon. I mean, he can at level 6 he can take dragon no problem. And I didn't even buy good items for him, so he it's a non-issue taking her. I killed the Elder Dragon and the and Baron just solo in that bot game. And, I was level 18 just seeing what this champion could do, but Daisy's tough.
Yeah, she's going to be interesting to see how much you can use that knock up and how smart it is. Like I know that I think that it'll still be a situation where you're going to try to hit, obviously hitting root collar and backline for not only Daisy but for your team anyways. So
I mean, you can't ignore her. Like Tibbers, you can kind of ignore because he does damage, but he's not that powerful. But if Daisy gets to your backline, like you have to either move away from her or kill her, because otherwise there's gonna be like a knock up that might hit 2 people, and your enemy has a great window of opportunity to fuck you over. So like Daisy is hard to ignore if she gets to you.
It's
Mitch,
also
do you know
that
what
same thing.
kind
You can
of-
also put trigger seed on her, and if
Exactly.
you ignore her, that's just going to explode, and that's a nice 70% slow. Sorry, Dom. What?
Do you know what kind of crowd control can be used on Daisy?
You should be able to use
That's
all types of
a
crowd control
great
on her.
question.
Well, it's one
I
of
don't
the,
see
like,
any
there are a
notes.
few abilities that only target champions, and like I'm gonna even double check her now, but for some reason Lulu's whimsy comes to mind.
You can
She can
Whimsy,
use
like-
that on minions too, right?
Yeah.
No,
Minions.
Oh.
She can't
the
use it on
polymorph. The polymorph. No.
Then it probably won't hit Daisy either. But I know she can be knocked up because I've seen that happen.
Oh, I know Vayne could condemn it in the wall, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think anything that can target a minion or monster is going to hit there. But like, yeah, I mean, whimsy, like that would be really useful against Daisy, but you might be shit out of luck there.
This is just the Riot's way of making Jhin less powerful, rather without nerfing him. They just bring in a champion again.
You would.
There's so much with this champion. I've seen so much theory crafting, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are expecting us to have like this crazy analysis of how this champion's going to play. But honestly, I think your guess is as good as mine with how it is. I mean, there's so much theory crafting we go through. I know you guys had a very long conversation about it today. Like, you could start here, you go automatically take the enemy's buff, but then you have a bit of downtime while you're walking back to your other camps. The enemy could just come invade you because you're so weak. You could work with your team to super invade. You can try to take the Scudler, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, his jungle pathing, like no one has really figured it out yet. People have found some routes that are super fast, but I don't know that they'll be actually effective in game. And I've seen some people do, like some people have done routes where they just tag every single camp and then they grab whatever they can on the way back. And some people do a thing where they like clear one side of the jungle, wait for a bit, go to a lane, and then they head into the other side of the jungle if they can't find. Like, there's a whole lot of experimentation, and I think it's going to be ages before people figure out the optimal way to route him and the optimal way to just generally play him. Because between the root thing that enables the whole rest of your team to gap close on someone, and the ability to create brush and vision denial, which is so powerful, and that goddamn area of effect shield, like it's gonna take a while before people figure out Ivern.
And you know what's crazy? We haven't even talked about the fact that there's a fairly good chance he could be played as a support that takes some camps on the side, like that completely changes your entire jungle
to do that
idea.
Well, you would have to take smite.
Yeah.
And that is a big sacrifice you are making for your laning phase.
I don't necessarily agree with that.
He doesn't necessarily.
I think that taking taking Krugs or Gromp whenever it's up wouldn't be that crazy.
You would have to wander up there and then wander back and then wander back up 40
I don't
seconds
like
later,
helping I don't like helping Pwn very much in lane, so I'm pretty okay with this.
If you're looking for somebody wander, go play Bard.
Yeah. That is still something that could happen, and
I'm behind that idea, but I think to do it most effectively, you need to take Smite, and part of that is like your goal there is to really set the jungler behind. You can do that well with Smite, but you need to you also still have to help your laner. You are the support, and them being thrown into, or your AD carry being thrown into 2v1 because you're busy clearing 3 camps is going to set them behind.
Would that work in a lane swap though?
Ooh,
that's a different story.
I think you could also maybe see something like you do this every time you're going back, or like I don't know. You could maybe.
But then you're taking your jungler's camps, and
I'm not a team player. I think this has been made clear.
I mean, what I do like about the support and taking Smite thing and everything is that you could basically give your team 3 blue buffs, like real easily. And
you could do that anyways. You could do that anyways if you're playing support. Like, you don't need Smite for that. If you go place a Grove down and then your guy takes it, you both get the buff.
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, but just in general, like you would want to go in, take it, and then you have everybody get out of there instead of go in waiting.
Oh, stealing one.
Yeah,
okay,
stealing.
yeah. Okay, I thought you meant like your own. I'm like, we don't need. I think we're pretty safe here. We don't worry about it.
We're stealing the opponent one for the mid laner or the AD carry, whoever, and then your teammate who is not jungling Ivern also gets blue.
Gotcha.
I think there could be a case for support Ivern. I definitely think he's gonna be a better jungler than he is a support by any means. But it's kind of like the support at least. It might work for a little while because maybe he's a little overtuned at release, and he gets a lot of cooldown reduction through the support items, which will help out using his abilities. But I guess it really comes down to how well can you use Brushmaker to make plays, and how well can you build team comps around that. Like if you obviously Caitlyn is a synergistic. I can't say that right.
Synergistic.
Thank you. Synergistic character that you'd play with this, because you drop a bush, she stands in the bush in the middle of the lane, pop, 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 or even on the side of the lane, pop, pop, pop. I now have more headshot procs, and I can theoretically pop at them. But we also have to assume that the enemy is decently it plays the game decently well, so that they can play into that, knowing that knowing how squishy that Ivern is. It might be easy enough to just blow him up and pop him. Kind of like
I think Rengar might be a hard counter to Ivern, really, because all of a sudden he can't use his brush freely, and Rengar can murder him at any point at any time in the jungle.
Yeah. Something I realized we didn't mention, because I saw this as a question on like day one that Ivern was mentioned. Ivern does get stacks of Strength of the Ages when he takes jungle camps, despite not actually killing them. So.
That would make sense.
It makes sense, but just in case you're about to go try him out and are like, I don't know if I should take this.
He gets CS score despite not actually killing them.
Yep.
Never mind. That's not a question. For some reason I was thinking he's getting health from camps, but he's losing it, not getting it back unless he's smiting. And I was going to say Spirit Visage because it has cooldown reduction on it, but obviously it doesn't make sense because he's losing health, not getting it back. The question that I have, when he's out of the jungle, obviously he's building runic echoes, right? Because he has AP scaling and he can get the burst damage through his abilities and whatnot.
Don't get Cinderhulk. Don't do what I did.
And you won't need Cinderhulk because you should be standing in some kind of brush and doing that extra bonus damage. That's the whole point of him, right? You put a brush down, stand and throw out your auto attacks. But after that, that's kind of why I said the Diana build might make sense on him because a Lich Bane might be okay. Probably not great, but you can Brushmaker to drop a Lich Bane. Nashers would be good because that has cooldown reduction and he gets the bonus
cooldown, AP, attack speed. I mean, and it's like the bonus damage. I guess just to put it, it's 60 to put a gold value on that. That's 1,500 gold. Damage.
Is there any merit to Blood Razor? You're splitting your damage types a little bit.
I don't think so, but only because all of his other abilities scale so well with ability power.
Oh yeah.
I don't think you want to
leaving a lot
try
of
and double
damage on
down
the
on
table.
attack speed. Just get ability power whatever way you can, and the secondary stats are nice, and just round yourself out that way. But ability power is what you want.
Yeah, trigger
I
seed,
agree.
0.8% and a 0.7%. Not 0.7%, but a 70% and 80%, so 0.8, 0.7 ability power ratio. Those are big numbers. Q has a 0.7 AP ratio. That's a big number for a...
Hell, the bonus passive damage on W is 30%.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going
on
full
every
AP,
auto.
that's a shit ton of on-hit extra damage.
See, that's why I'm curious if we're going to see Runic Echoes, Boots of Swiftness, Nashers, and Azonias.
I like Rylai's
I
a lot,
think-
but I don't know if it's great yet, just because of...
Wouldn't he
just
go
because of the-
mobility boots?
Moby's, yes.
See,
Because
I
I
see
don't
him
think
going-
when he takes a jungle camp, he doesn't trigger combat.
Nope, he doesn't.
So
He stays-
Moby
he
boots
stays
would
out
be
of
up
combat.
all the time on him.
I feel like he's going to want either the Hextech GLP or Rod of Ages.
Yeah, I hadn't tried GLP. I tried Rod of Ages in my game.
He won't be able to get Rod of Ages out of the jungle in time. It won't be fast enough to stack it up unless he's rushing it.
Well, the thing is, if GLP is the item that people start going for, it kind of also makes sense for the sticking to kind of idea of let's get all those ranged autos and get a lot of damage there.
You can get the revolver early, and it's extra some nice extra ganking damage just because of the on hit on champions.
Yeah, the one of you'll get in a gang.
Right.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. Yeah.
I do kind of like that Akali, not the Akali build, but that's another Diana build, the Hextech Revolver and the...
Akali doesn't have any
Nashor's too.
builds.
Kali has the Hextech. Yeah, the GLP belt. The GLP belt's the one that slows, right?
GLP, it's just GLP. Belt is the proto belt is the one that
right.
jumps you.
Yeah, the GOP is the one that slows. That's nice. And I can see where you're going with Rylai's. There's some type of... You don't want to do Frozen Mallet, obviously, because it's attack damage, and he doesn't scale with it too well, because he does more damage. But yeah, you need some kind of slow to stick. But at the same time, I guess you're using your Trigger Seed to stick.
The more I think about it, you either you're using Trigger Seed or you're rooting somebody on your other two abilities, so it's like, it would only be for your W.
Well, see, the reason I like the GLP then is the abilities are on long cooldowns and everything. The slows are going to wear off and that type of stuff. And it's reasonable between all the other shit in the game that you'd want to have that, additional opportunity to slow them down.
Yep. I like GLP. I like the...
Rylai's also sounds good.
Yeah, it's okay. I think it's kind of a people were going to buy it accidentally once they think, oh, that'll work, and then it probably won't be right. I think GLP will be way better just because you get the mana too. You actually kind of want mana too because you use a good chunk of it in early levels, late levels not so much because that actually drops.
That would explain why all of his mana costs are flat too.
Yep.
I mean, they're all 60, 30, 50, 100. Like that's it. There's no scaling down or anything.
Yeah, it actually gets up to
Or scaling up,
maxes. It goes from 135 to 156 is the max, and that's at like level 8. It does drop significantly later on as the amount of mana that you have to put in camps because it wouldn't make sense if you had to use like all of your mana to go like, I'll go do these camps. Shit, I have to go back now before I can do anything else. Sorry guys, enjoy the 4v5.
So I'm assuming we're maxing Root Collar and Trigger Seed and Brushmaker last, right?
That's what it seems at first.
I mean,
like,
you don't have to max Trigger Seed, though, because you get the 70% slow at rank 1. So you could go and... It depends what your vision strategy is, because if you really want to play Vision Denial, it might be worth getting a low cooldown on Brushmaker.
It's also a lot of damage on Trigger Seed.
Yeah, it is. That was
True.
the other thing. I mean, 0.8%. I mean,
And
it's
it's a good
a lot of
shield.
damage, and it's a giant shield with this extra ability power. That's why I like Zonia's, right? Because Zonia's is a big chunk. It's 100 ability power.
I was actually thinking Root Collar was going to be his 1-point wonder just because you get so much bonus damage from Brushmaker from ranking that up too. But
Oh, with his passive amount of damage.
Yeah, the amount of like you root him, and then as you're chasing down, like you're gonna more than make up for the magic damage there between other allies getting in and Brushmaker. But
yeah, and the cooldown on Root Caller is so long, and it doesn't really go down that fast. So I think you're right. It might be just like Root Caller is not your damage thing. It's a thing you use to gap close.
The extra root duration is huge, but
it is huge.
I could see as a support maybe maxing E and 1.1 draw on Q. Maybe like that's actually crazy.
Know.
This we can argue every ability as being like a first one to go for, and that doesn't happen very often on champs.
All
it's really different playstyles.
The streamers who released videos for it all seem to be maxing Q for what that's worth.
Yeah, well, the stun duration goes up with every point you put into it, and the damage is pretty good. To go back to the item discussion, it was something that I should have brought up. It was actually brought up in chat by Blood Gulch. It might just be the case where he doesn't get Runic Echoes. It might just be he gets to smite him and then moves on to something else. Or even just skips to smite him altogether. I mean, that's not likely because you need the extra... You'll pick up the 2 pieces to get the extra... experience in the jungle, but if you just pick up the smite him kind of like a Master Yi jungle and then skip and go right into your bigger item, that might work really well for him.
We talked about getting boots of mobility or swiftness earlier, but Runic Echoes has 7% movement speed, and that gives him a chance to get either Sorcerer's Shoes or CDR boots,
right,
which could have like a really big impact on him in a different way without sacrificing movement speed because he has Runic Echoes.
It's worth noting, Pone, that you don't need to go for the smite him. You can get the same amount from just Talisman. Like you get the same amount of experience.
You need both. You get they're not both items give you experience. They're not they're not unique passives.
Then why does well, Tracker's Knife, it looks like it only gives the same amount as either one individually. Oh yeah, and it doesn't stack with passive nail. Yeah, no, you don't. You only need one of them. And you would only need Talisman. Hey, don't get Machete first, guys. It doesn't make sense to get Lifesteal versus monsters when you
no, don't get that for sure.
Yeah, Talisman is all you need. But I mean, that's the way this is.
Don't get anything that gives you damage against jungle
the 50
monsters.
bonus experience is that's not unique. The only unique is nail or tooth.
And then look down.
Oh, the
limitations. The bonus
does not stack with passive tooth.
Yep.
There you go. Hunter's Machete into straight just to your items rather than smite
Talisman. Please God, just Talisman.
That's fine, Talisman. Sorry.
Yeah, it's good. So yeah, that's it, guys. That's the build. It's Talisman into whatever the fuck. That's it. AP and health and CDR and more AP.
Movement speed and
I guess armor and MR. You know, the tanky stuff.
Yeah.
I am
into
so
everything that
to
isn't
see what
attack
people
damage.
build
That's
this
what
guy.
you want to build.
Like I want to see how many different like meta builds come out of this character, because I feel like there could actually be multiple. Like
it depends on his comp. Yeah, I mean, because like the things that he enables, like if you have a good Ivern, you can play Darius because he lands a Root Caller and now you are in range and you can start dunking on assholes.
How about like Mordekaiser? Mordekaiser's suddenly on top of people. What about that?
I mean any melee champion?
And I mean, Jax gets something like even Jax, like because that means you can get into combat with Jax, and then you still have your leap strike in combat. Like so, you can get really annoyingly mobile with Jax, like jump on a front liner with the Q, and then jump to the back line with the leap strike and stun them.
This is gonna be awesome. I can't wait to play this champion. I need to jump on the PvE and play him before he's released.
Yeah, good luck playing him in any actual games.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's not happening.
I'm sure he's either banned or just
there's no blind pick, so that's the kind of shitty part.
And everyone just bans it to say fuck you.
Yeah, or it picks it immediately. So.
All right, I think that pretty much sums up this episode. You guys got all our thoughts on this champion, and I'm sure we will wrap right back around to him after he's been released. We will be talking about Ivern for a very long time, as I'm sure the rest of the league community will be as well. Any last thoughts?
Into the ground and we never see him again.
I think my last thought actually circles back to just when I briefly touched on Bard. I think it's funny because Bard at the start when he was first released wasn't really seen as a competitive type of champion. I don't know what and he was kind of like, okay, what the fuck are these guys making? This is like everyone seems to be really hyped for, but I could see him going the opposite direction in terms of competitive play, which kind of sucks. Or he could be like a meta breaker. I don't know yet.
Well, your
If
Bard
he's
point,
in competitive, like it's gonna be a crepo thing. Like you're gonna need someone who specializes in Ivern. Like I don't think you can.
And then
It's gonna be a
yeah.
long time before a majority of supporter jungle players can actually just pick him up because he's so complicated.
keep in mind with Bard when he first came out, though, he was severely undertuned. His chimes and his passives and all that stuff didn't do very much damage. He was actually a pretty bad champion for a while, just the fact that he didn't really do too much. And then they got him into a good place where he was decent to play. So
Yeah.
It'll be a learning curve.
yeah, there's a bit of it. All right, I think that's it, guys. I think that's going to be the end of all be all. Guys, go check out Skyen at castercomics.com with an X. Support him on
Yes.
Patreon. He needs to. He is a struggling artist and needs your help.
He's working on a sprawling epic comic right now.
Oh God, yeah. My little project. I'm working on a Star Guardians webcomic, which
You can you can blame Adam for this one because Adam is the reason that Obscurica even got into writing in the first place.
Yeah, I blame Adam for a lot of things.
Might as well.
Keeping
yeah.
you up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, for instance, yeah, and I have classes tomorrow, so that's fun. But
He
yeah, I'm
enjoys
working
it.
on a yeah, I do. I'm working on a webcomic about the Star Guardians as sort of a magical girl kind of take off on that kind of thing. It's
Sailor
gonna be
Moon.
10 pages. Yeah, Sailor Moon, that kind of stuff. 10 pages gonna be uploaded within a month or two when I'm done with them, and then we'll see if people want more of it and if I do more of it from there. But that's what I'm working on right now.
Skyen's going to put it behind a paywall. If you want more, click here to buy. $4.99 to read the next comic. No, he won't do that, or he will.
No, I'm gonna do that now, and I'm gonna blame you.
Yes, $1.99. Read the next comic. 99 cents a page. I'm sorry, I give you so many good ideas, or terrible ideas, however you want to take it.
Ideas nonetheless.
That's right. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the Trinity Force podcast. Thank you for supporting Skyen and supporting the network. Guys, thank you so much for listening and enjoying the content that we're putting out. We will be back on Wednesday as we are jumping into some League theory discussion outside of, I want to call it our normal mold right now, is Patch Notes Champion, and then there's like an episode in between where we've got a living document going with a bunch of theory and gameplay analysis and ideas and whatnot that we want to throw at you. So we'll be back Wednesday with more information. Mitch?
Days recorded the Kale Champ Select episode just earlier today, and we should be recording Riven tomorrow. So, and we should, I think we have like 2 more lined up for next week. So we're going to get a little bit ahead of the curve. What's that? That's new.
That's new for us.
Productive up in here.
People are like, why haven't we got our Champions Select yet? I'm like, they're coming before the 30th. I am. They're coming out, I promise.
Yeah.
We just kind of fell behind a little bit. But hey, it happens. All right, guys, thanks for listening again. Thank you for supporting us, guys. We will see you all on Wednesday with some champion or league discussion. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.